All right, Aquarius. So let me just say before I get started here that the oracle cards aren't going to be for everybody, but you know how I feel about that. Apparently somebody needs to hear this. So from Lay Vampire, Prey, Stalked, Invaded, and Watched. And then from Chakra Wisdom, you pulled Workaholic. Now, for me, this kind of has the feeling of dealing with some really shitty people who are making you feel inadequate and you are busting your ass to prove them wrong. But that's not fair to you. Now, the other thing, though, too, with Workaholic is you could be avoiding having to deal with people like this and instead using work as an excuse. You know, Workaholic warns that, you know, while you work, your life is happening, right? Is your life passing you by? Is that what you feel like, you know? But are you doing this to not have to deal with somebody in your space who is trying to blame you for their own bad behavior? You know, and again, with Prey, you didn't attract this. This is not your fault. You know, sometimes we just have to deal with really shitty people. Now, the other thing I will say is I do think that some of you need to be careful about who you're dealing with in a work situation. Workaholic may be saying that you're choosing to deal with somebody who's a little bit sketchy because you need to work. You know, whatever that work situation is, whether you're in like retail, if you work from home, whatever it is where you're dealing directly with other people, you know, be careful about who you allow into your space with Prey being there. All right, Aquarius. Here's your overall for the week, the Lovers. Okay. Now, with this being the overall, absolutely, we could be talking about a very significant relationship, marriage, right? But it's also the choices that you're making within that relationship, or we're just talking about major life choices in general here, but we'll see how the Lovers is playing out. But this is significant, you know, I mean, Gemini, maybe. You guys know how I feel about that, but it's important. The choices you're about to make are going to affect your relationship, is what I feel like. Now, in the past, the Queen of Pentacles, I look at that and I think, you know, this could definitely be about somebody that's coming through, somebody you may be dealing with. It could be about your partner here. But what I feel like, because of her being there, that you are more focused on, you know, creating more abundance. You know, I usually look at her and I feel like she doesn't need this. She doesn't need a king, right? She knows how to create that shit on her own. She doesn't need him to do that for her. You know, but you may be more focused on a career right now, especially with Workaholic showing up. You know, but is that choice affecting a relationship? You know, and I'm not seeing anything bad here. And I'm not saying that something bad is going to happen. But do you feel like it's your responsibility within the relationship to create security and stability, right? Oh boy. All right. In the present, the Eight of Swords. Now, you know, forget about a relationship if we're talking about major choices here. Clearly, you know, you feel stuck in a situation, but it's like you need to continue doing it to keep that stability and comfort going. But are you thinking about making a different choice? You know, and how is that going to affect you? How is that going to affect, you know, especially a work situation, the money that you're bringing in? Now, if we're talking about a major relationship here, for you right now, it's almost like I'm stuck right now. Like I'm stuck with what I need to work on, you know? But maybe there needs to be a look at a relationship here, possibly spending more time together, you know? And I say that because of Workaholic showing up. But clearly in the present moment, you are stuck with a situation, or you think you are, right? Oh, shit. Wow. Aquarius, what the hell? The Tower in future conditions. You know, this to me is like, instead of opening your eyes to where you feel stuck or where you think you feel stuck, you just abruptly change things, like boom, right? And I think that it's you doing it because we're looking at, you know, a major life choice here. When you're looking at the Lovers, it's about temptation or moral high ground, right? Following the temptation that may not be forever and going with what you know is right for you and is going to benefit you in the long run. That's kind of how I look at that when we're talking about major choices, right? But is this choice affecting a relationship, though, for some of you? I don't think it's the other way around. I feel like this is you creating the tower moment, so to speak. But I feel like for some of you, you think you have to do this, but you didn't really open up to other possibilities because you're surrounded by all these swords thinking, this is the only way that this shit's going to happen. So I'm just going to have to boom and do it, And like I said, for a lot of you, it could be because of your career, because you are like the breadwinner, so to speak, right? And, I wonder if some of you don't feel stuck with a work situation here like you have to, because you may be the only one bringing in, financial stability, which is possible here. Woo. Your best path to follow, the Knight of Wands. I think that because we're looking at the Eight of Swords in the Tower and how this progresses, with the Knight of Wands being your advice, I think absolutely you need to follow what you feel like is the right thing to do, but watch what, you actually act on. Because I look at the Knight of Wands and think of somebody who doesn't give a shit about the consequences of the actions, right? And it's not that you don't care, but if you haven't opened your eyes to the fact that, maybe there was another way to become unstuck, are you drastically changing things and not thinking about how it's affecting somebody else? But then at the same time, I still feel like you're still right to follow a passion or, follow what is going to make you happy. As far as a relationship goes, absolutely, there needs to be more passion, more excitement, right? But I'm stuck here in this drastic, like that was the only way to do it. I don't care what you say. I had to do it this way. Oh, in your environment, the Five of Pentacles, and that may be wise. So, and it makes me think that, because I keep going back to this feeling of you being the one coming through here that is like creating the financial stability because of the Queen of Pentacles kicking this off. And I'm looking at it lining down, right? You can only do so much, especially if you're dealing with a partner that may not be working, or, if you've been in financially difficult situations and felt like you were stuck, it's like, no, this is the only way for me to do this, right? And like I said, I feel like you're right for doing this. But for those of you who have another person involved in this, I feel like that may be where this is coming from. Because with the Five of Pentacles, you're talking about financial strain. I don't think it's about you rejecting anybody or feeling like you're on the outside looking in. It's, I don't want to be in poverty. I don't want to do that. So boom, right? And everything just, no, it's changing, and it's changing right now. I have to do this, and I have to do this way because I need to continue bringing in financial stability. Wow. Your hopes and your fears, the King of Pentacles, hoping that the other half will maybe start doing his part, maybe. Now, the fear would be like, if we're looking at the Five of Pentacles with the King of Pentacles, that, maybe a person that you are with is losing their job, right? Or a person that is losing their job. You may be changing things abruptly to help them out, to like prevent any more financial difficulty. But if we're talking about a partnership here, especially with the Lovers, I felt like I feel like I'm asking myself, why did I say I felt like I felt like I had to do this? I wonder if you've already done this, like drastic boom, right? But how is that affecting you in the outcome? Anyway, if I could talk right, for good Christ's sakes, I've been saying that all fucking week. The King of Pentacles is hopes and fears. Hoping and fearing around somebody else's ability to, create abundance, create success, right? And it looks like a great partnership, but money is an issue. And drastic changes with work situations may be an issue too. And then coming out, the Six of Cups. I look at this and I think these are all of the things that are kind of happening around you right now, right? And I'm looking at it lining out. Does this abrupt change bring you back to a past where you were happy. Because, I mean, you know, I think of happy past, happy memories, you know, and then I look back at the past, though, and think about you feeling like you were the breadwinner here. You were the one creating security and stability. You know, I really do think that, you know, for those of you, first of all, if you're single, at one point, you felt like you were able to create this. Something has got you stuck that is like draining your finances. You, boom, abruptly change things, make a major life choice, and you go back to a place where you feel good again, right? Going back to the past and remembering how you were able to create that security and stability, and you're right for doing that. Now, if you're in a relationship, it's a totally different story here. You know, I feel like you're doing this because you need to get back to a connection where, you know, you were happy together. But work and money seems to be the issue surrounding the decisions that are being made. And then the Ten of Wands. With the Tower being there, though, you know, it's like needing to just drop it. Especially with the Sun being there. The Four of Cups. The Four of Cups kicking this off and looking at the Queen of Pentacles. You know, I don't think that you were happy having to do this in the first place. And I don't think that you're happy that you have to do this now. You know, and I look at this and feel like that cup just isn't being filled by all the hard work that you're doing, you know, because this one, to me, beyond boredom, I mean, the cup in front of her is empty, but what she needs to fill it is right there, but you're not seeing it, you know, being dissatisfied here with what's happening around you, what's happening possibly in a relationship, in a work situation. The Sun, though, the Sun is like that clarity that's there, that drive and that push, because I feel like sense of direction, ego, right, when it comes to the Sun. Where are you headed? You're not really seeing things clearly, though, with the Eight of Swords. But it's like once you start hitting financial strain, it's like clarity immediately comes and shit, I need to change things. And then boom, you have the Tower and then the Ten of Wands, right? There are going to be consequences to that action when it comes to what you're dealing with financially, but I still see you coming out in a better place when it comes to a relationship, you know. Now, for some of you looking at this, it's a major life choice here to suddenly drastically change things, but with the Ten of Wands coming out with the Six of Cups, you may have to take on more responsibility, you know, and that may be the case too, but in order to get to a place where both of you are happy, right, you may have to take on more of the responsibility. But, you know, I also feel like I need to drop it. I need to drop it, you know. Wow, Aquarius. This one, you know, it pulls me in a couple of different ways, and I'm trying to keep it open as far as the general reading. But I have to be honest, I do think that this is going to have to do for some of you that are in a relationship here. And what is happening with money, work, somebody not working, you doing a lot of work, you know. But like I said, right, be careful about what it is you choose to do based on a passion that's driving you, you know, because I still think that some of you just aren't seeing, you know, it's only when financial strain starts to hit that the sun is shining on it. But, you know, instead of going, okay, it's clear now, you're just like, you know what, no, boom, you know. I still feel like you think that you didn't have a choice but to do it that way. And then I love you. These are very important words. Yeah. So, you know, if you are dealing with a partner here who has left their job or lost their job, you know, whatever the situation is, even though responsibility is being put on you, you know, it's important to let them know that you still love them. Look, like I still love you, right? I'm going to help you. I'm going to support you. But you need to get your act together, right? But it's not bad. Just make sure that you speak in a loving way when you're dealing with your partner.